Sarah's grandmother had warned her about the old reservation roads, but desperation made people do stupid things. With her car broken down and no cell signal for miles, walking was her only option. The dirt road stretched endlessly through the Arizona desert, and night was falling fast. She'd been walking for an hour when she saw the campfire in the distance. A family was gathered around it. A father, mother, and 2 children. They looked normal enough, camping under the vast desert sky. Sarah approached carefully, calling out so she wouldn't startle them. "Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but my car broke down. Could I possibly use your phone?" The father looked up and smiled, waving her over. "Of course, dear. Come, sit by the fire. You must be freezing." As Sarah got closer, relief flooded through her. They seemed like a nice, normal family. The mother was stirring something in a pot over the fire, and the 2 children, a boy and a girl, maybe 8 and 10, were playing with carved wooden toys. But as she settled down by the fire, something felt wrong. The father kept smiling, but his smile never changed. It was frozen in place, too wide, showing too many teeth. The mother stirred the pot mechanically, the same motion over and over, never pausing, never varying the rhythm. The children were the worst. They played with their toys, but Sarah realized they were making the same movements repeatedly, like a video stuck on loop. The wooden figures in their hands looked less like toys and more like little people, carved with disturbing detail. "What's in the pot?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "Family recipe," the mother said without looking up. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "Been in our family for generations, passed down from father to son, mother to daughter." The father's smile stretched wider. "We're always looking for new family members. People who get lost, people who need help, people who won't be missed." Sarah's blood turned to ice. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't obey her. Looking down, she saw that her feet were sinking into the ground around the fire, as if the earth itself was swallowing her. The children stopped their repetitive play and looked at her with eyes that reflected the firelight like mirrors. When they smiled, their faces cracked open to reveal rows of yellowed teeth and black, writhing tongues. "Don't worry," the little girl said in a voice like grinding sand. "It only hurts for the first 100 years." The mother finally looked up from her pot, and Sarah saw that half of her face was missing, revealing skull and sinew beneath rotting flesh. "Dinner's almost ready," she said cheerfully. Sarah realized what was in the pot. Bones floated to the surface, human bones, some still wearing jewelry. A wedding ring bobbed in the greasy broth, along with what looked like a child's tooth. The father reached out and touched Sarah's face with fingers that were too long, too cold, too sharp. "Such a pretty face. We'll wear it well." As Sarah sank deeper into the hungry earth, she could hear voices in the darkness beyond the fire. Dozens of voices, all calling for help, all pleading to be saved. The voices of everyone who had stopped at this family's fire, everyone who had trusted their friendly smiles and welcoming warmth. The last thing Sarah saw before the earth closed over her head was the family removing their faces like masks, revealing the writhing darkness beneath. They hung their stolen faces on nearby branches like trophies, and she realized with growing horror that she recognized some of them. Her own grandmother's face smiled down at her from among the branches, mouth moving silently in a warning that came far too late. In the morning, Hikers would find her car abandoned by the roadside. But they would never find Sarah, because she had become part of the family now, waiting by eternal fires for the next lost traveler to trust their friendly faces and welcoming smiles. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories. Marcus had always been a light sleeper, so when his German Shepherd Rax started whimpering at 3 a.m., he jolted awake immediately. The dog was pressed against the bedroom door, trembling like he'd been electrocuted. In 5 years, Marcus had never seen Rax afraid of anything. "What's wrong, boy?" Marcus whispered, but Rax just whined and scratched at the door with desperate claws. That's when Marcus heard it, another dog barking outside. But it wasn't quite right. The bark was too deep, too guttural, like it was coming from something much larger than any dog should be. And it was mimicking Rax's exact bark pattern from earlier that evening. Marcus crept to the window and peered through the blinds. In the pale moonlight, he saw what looked like Rex standing in his backyard. Same black and tan coloring, same size, same stance. But this Rex was wrong. Its legs were too long, bent at angles that made Marcus's stomach lurch. Its head swayed back and forth like a snake tasting the air. The thing in his yard turned toward the window and Marcus bit back a scream. The face was Rex's face, but stretched like melted wax. The eyes were human, old, intelligent, and filled with malicious hunger. When it opened its mouth to bark again, Marcus could see rows of needle-sharp teeth that belonged to no earthly creature. Behind him, the real Rex had gone completely silent. Marcus turned to see his dog lying flat on the floor, paws over his head, shaking uncontrollably. The fake Rex began walking toward the house, but its movement was all wrong. Instead of a normal gait, it moved like a puppet being jerked by invisible strings. Each step was too precise, too calculated. As it got closer, Marcus could see that its fur wasn't fur at all. It was human hair, long and matted, covering pale skin that rippled and shifted with each movement. The thing reached the back door and began scratching. But instead of paw scratches, Marcus heard the sound of fingernails, human fingernails scraping against the wood. The scratching formed a rhythm, almost like Morse code, spelling out a message Marcus didn't want to understand. Through the door, he heard his own voice calling, "Marcus, let me in! Marcus! Rex needs to come outside! Rex wants to play!" But Marcus was standing right there, and Rex was cowering on the bedroom floor. The voice came again, perfect mimicry of his own tone. "Open the door, Marcus. Don't you want to see what Rex has become? Don't you want to become like Rex too?" Marcus grabbed his shotgun from the closet, hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped it twice. When he looked out the window again, there were 3 of them now. 3 Rex things, all swaying in that horrible hypnotic rhythm. They had formed a circle around his house, and their human eyes gleamed with ancient hunger. The scratching at the door intensified, joined by scratching at every window, every entrance. The sound of fingernails on glass, on wood, on metal, creating a symphony of invasion that made Marcus's teeth ache. The real Rex had started bleeding from his nose, whimpering softly, as if the presence of these things was poisoning him just by existing. Marcus never opened the door that night. By morning, the things were gone, but he found human handprints pressed into the mud around his house, handprints with claws. And Rex was never the same, spending his days staring at empty corners and whining at sounds only he could hear. Sometimes, on quiet nights, Marcus still hears his own voice calling from outside, begging to be let in. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
Jake thought the graveyard shift at the gas station would be easy money. Just sit behind bulletproof glass, sell cigarettes to insomniacs, and catch up on his Netflix shows. The station sat on a lonely stretch of highway outside Flagstaff, surrounded by nothing but desert and darkness. It was his third week when a regular customer started coming in. She always arrived exactly at 2:47 a.m., never a minute early or late. Tall, thin, wearing the same faded sundress every night. She would buy a single pack of Marlboros, pay with exact change, and leave without saying a word. Jake had tried making conversation, but she only stared at him with eyes that seemed too large for her gaunt face. Tonight felt different, though. The woman arrived at her usual time, but instead of heading straight for the cigarettes, she stood by the door for a full minute, just watching Jake through the glass. Her head was tilted at an angle that made Jake's neck hurt just looking at it. When she finally moved, it was wrong. Instead of walking, she glided across the floor like she was on wheels. Her feet never quite touched the ground, and her dress didn't move with the motion of her body. She placed the cigarettes on the counter and stared at Jake. Up close, he could see that her skin was gray, mottled like old meat. Her fingernails were black and way too long, curling at the tips like claws. "You work here every night," she said. Her voice was like wind through dry leaves. "Yeah," Jake managed, "just trying to make some extra money." She smiled, and Jake's bowels nearly released. Her teeth were filed to points, and her gums were black with what looked like dried blood. "I used to work here too." That was impossible. Jake had been told he was the first night shift worker this place had hired in over 2 years. "When?" he asked, though he didn't want to know the answer. "When I died." She reached across the counter with one impossibly long arm and touched Jake's face. Her skin was ice cold and felt like leather that had been left in the sun too long. Where her fingers touched him, Jake felt his skin begin to burn and blister. "I've been watching you, Jake. You're just like I was, young, naive, alone out here in the dark. Do you know what it's like to die alone? To have something tear you apart, piece by piece, while you're still conscious?" Jake tried to back away, but his feet wouldn't move. Looking down, he saw that shadows had wrapped around his ankles like rope, holding him in place. The woman began to change. Her sundress dissolved like smoke, revealing pale, emaciated flesh covered in deep claw marks that still bled sluggishly. Her limbs stretched longer, her spine curved, and her face began to elongate like putty being pulled. "It happened right here," she whispered, her voice now coming from multiple directions at once. "Right behind that counter where you stand every night. Something came in pretending to be human, just like I'm pretending now." Jake realized with mounting horror that he could see through her to the wall behind. She was becoming translucent, and other shapes were materializing around her, twisted, half-formed things with too many limbs and faces that shifted like liquid. "It wore my co-worker's face," she continued, her form now more shadow than substance. "Just like I'm going to wear yours." The security cameras began to spark and smoke. The lights flickered, casting everything in strobing nightmare shadows. Through the windows, Jake could see more figures approaching, dozens of them, all wearing faces that didn't quite fit, all moving with that same wrong, gliding motion. The woman leaned forward until her face was inches from Jake's. He could smell her breath, rotting meat and copper pennies. "The thing that killed me is still here, Jake. It's been waiting for a replacement, someone young and stupid enough to take the night shift." She reached behind the counter and pulled out something that made Jake scream. It was his own face, perfectly preserved, eyes still blinking in terror. "Don't worry," she said, pulling off her own face like a rubber mask to reveal the writhing darkness beneath. "I'll take good care of it. I'll wear it better than you ever did." As the shadows closed in and Jake felt his face being peeled away layer by layer, he realized that the job posting he had answered had never mentioned the previous employee's fate. The gas station still operates today. If you stop there between 2 and 4 a.m., you might meet the friendly young man behind the counter. He'll smile and sell you cigarettes and make pleasant small talk. But if you look closely, you'll notice that his face doesn't quite fit right, like a mask that's slightly too small. And sometimes, late at night, customers swear they can hear screaming coming from behind the counter, the sound of someone begging not to have their face stolen.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
Mrs. Henderson had been Emma's favorite teacher for 3 years, so when she didn't show up to class that Monday morning, Emma knew something was wrong. The substitute who walked in looked exactly like Mrs. Henderson. Same gray hair, same wire-rimmed glasses, same floral dress she always wore. But Emma noticed the differences immediately. This Mrs. Henderson moved wrong. Her steps were too calculated, like she was consciously thinking about how to walk. When she wrote on the blackboard, she held the chalk with her entire fist instead of between her fingers. And her smile never reached her eyes, which seemed to track every student's movement like a predator watching prey. "Good morning, children," the substitute said in Mrs. Henderson's voice, but the words came out slightly delayed, like she was lip-syncing to a recording. During math class, Emma raised her hand to ask about the homework assignment. The substitute turned toward her, and Emma saw something that made her stomach drop. For just a split second, the woman's face flickered like a bad TV signal, revealing something pale and eyeless underneath. "Yes, Emma," the substitute asked, and Emma realized with growing horror that she had never introduced herself. How did this woman know her name? I just wanted to know about the homework," Emma whispered. The substitute smiled that too wide smile again. "Don't worry about homework, dear. We have much more important things to learn today." As the day progressed, Emma noticed other disturbing details. When the substitute turned to face the blackboard, her head rotated a full 180 degrees while her body stayed facing forward. During lunch, Emma peeked through the classroom window and saw the woman sitting perfectly still at the desk, not eating, not moving, just staring at the wall with unblinking eyes. But the worst part was how the other students acted. They seemed entranced, hanging on every word the substitute said. When she told them to put their heads down and close their eyes for quiet time, they obeyed immediately. Emma pretended to comply, but watched through barely open eyelids as the substitute walked between the desks, touching each child's forehead with one long, pale finger. Where she touched them, dark marks appeared on their skin, marks that looked suspiciously like claw scratches. After school, Emma hid behind the building and watched as the substitute locked up the classroom. In the parking lot, instead of getting into a car, the woman simply walked into the woods behind the school and disappeared among the trees. Emma followed at a distance, her heart pounding. Deep in the woods, she found a small clearing where the substitute stood in the center of a circle made from what looked like animal bones. The woman raised her arms to the darkening sky and began to chant in a language that hurt Emma's ears to hear. As she chanted, the substitute's form began to shift and change. Her human disguise peeled away like old paint, revealing something tall and gaunt, with skin like tree bark and eyes like black holes. Around the clearing, other figures emerged from behind trees, twisted, wrong things that might have once been human. Emma backed away slowly, trying not to make any noise, but she stepped on a dry branch. The crack echoed through the clearing like a gunshot.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
Every head turned toward her hiding spot, including the thing that had been pretending to be Mrs. Henderson.
It smiled with a mouth full of broken glass teeth and beckoned to Emma with one impossibly long finger. "Come here, Emma," it said in Mrs. Henderson's stolen voice. "Class isn't over yet. We have so much more to teach you." Emma ran. She burst through her front door, gasping and sobbing, and told her parents everything. But when they called the school, the principal assured them that Mrs. Henderson had been teaching all day, that she seemed perfectly fine, just a little tired. The next morning, Emma refused to go to school. Her parents dragged her anyway, convinced she was having some kind of breakdown. Mrs. Henderson was waiting at the classroom door with that same wrong smile. "Good morning, Emma," she said. "I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're going to learn about family, about how sometimes when you find the right students, you get to keep them forever." As Emma was pushed into the classroom, she saw that all her classmates were there, sitting perfectly still with those dark marks on their foreheads. They turned to look at her in perfect unison, and their eyes were completely black. The last anyone heard from Emma's class was the sound of children singing, but the song was in that same painful language Emma had heard in the woods, and the voices harmonized in ways that human throats shouldn't be able to manage. The school was evacuated that afternoon after other teachers reported hearing screaming from Mrs. Henderson's classroom. When they broke down the door, they found the room empty except for 23 sets of children's clothes arranged neatly on the desks. Mrs. Henderson was never seen again, neither were her students. But sometimes, hikers in those woods report hearing the sound of a school lesson being conducted somewhere in the darkness. A teacher's voice asking questions, and children's voices responding in perfect, inhuman unison.
If these stories sent chills down your spine, don't vanish into the darkness without hitting that like button. Share your scariest experience in the comments below, because your story might be featured next. And remember, the scariest thing is missing out, so subscribe now before the next nightmare finds you.